Story 1. Bloody Murder by Holden Winnikers. She'd heard Annie screaming bloody murder in the kitchen and ran to find her daughter backed up in tea. He corner crying like a child, trembling holding herself, with broken glass all over. "Jesus Christ, Annie," says her mother. Annie stares petrified up at the air round the old kitchen tay. Riff eyes her, and her skin is pale, and her mouth is gaped open. "Annie, can you hear me, Annie? Get up now, and clean up this goddamn mess, mother," she cries hoarsely. "Annie," shouts her mother. Her mother hadn't noticed the blood trickling down from Annie's leg. "Jesus Christ, Annie. Aren't you about the biggest klutz on planet Earth?" "Mother," she cries, "clean this mess up now." Annie looks behind her mother in pure jolting terror, and her mother shifts around quickly to see what's behind her, but there's nothing there. Nothing but the kitchen window looking out the backyard, dewy and fogged up from autumn. Annie rises with blood trickling down her leg. "Annie, you better clean this mess up now, or I swear to God, Annie, you're not too old for foster C, are yet?" "Oh, mother, please," Annie cries. "You say the same old tired things over and over like a broken record. Don't you talk back to me, you little shit, mother. I'll see. Lean the mess. Jesus Christ, just leave me alone. You're a goddamn klutz, Annie. That's why you'll never marry and you'll never have children." "Mother," Annie sobs, "you'll never do anything with your life, and you'll die an old maiden, and I'll die having wasted my life raising you. The failure, mother, please. Don't take your misery out on me." Her crying face was ugly like that of a newborn's. Her mother didn't say a word more, but her face remained the same, inverted skull staring at her daughter. Annie cries, and her bloodshot eyes dart about the kitchen. "Clean up the glass, Annie, and clean you. Tea your blood." Annie lets out a painful wail, stood there like a ghoul. "Or don't bother, Annie, I don't care any more. Swallow some of that glass while you're at it. Why don't you?" Annie collapses to the floor in a sobbing mess, and her mother leaves the kitchen. She bleeds and sobs for a while more before silence gives way, and she lay there like some bloody doll until she hears her moth leave the home, slamming the door behind her. Annie rises, wipes her tears, kicks broken dish glass aside, and grabs the phone. Dials Megan. Megan lay in her bed sheets calm and serene, reading a peculiar book when her phone begins to ring on her bedside table. She answers and suddenly isn't so calm as Annie begins abruptly babbling in frantic sobs. "Slow down," says Megan. "Annie, what's going on? What happened? I saw her." "Saw who?" "Her." Megan pauses a moment as it dawns on her. "Rebecca?" "Yes." "Okay, Annie, calm down. Where'd you see her? In your dream?" "No, in the kitchen. I saw her floating." "In the kitchen? Floating, Annie? What the hell are you talking about?" "She was floating and bleeding, and she looked all ashed up like she had when she fell. All blooded and mangled. Oh Christ, she was mutilated, Megan. She was bleeding all over." "Annie, calm down. Just take a deep breath." "Annie does feel better." No." "Annie, are you sure you did just have an hallucination?" "No, I didn't, Megan. I swear to God." She was splattered like some zombie, and her skin was all gray and cracking like plaster. Her hair was black and floated all snakish, and her whole body and clothes were all rotten and ripped up and rippling like she was floating underwater. And her mouth was all gaped open. And oh God, Megan, there was so much blood. But Megan, no, Megan, the minute my mother entered the kitchen, the blood was gone, and she was gone. Rebecca was gone, Megan. She's come back to haunt us. Annie, how long has it been since you last slept? I don't know. I haven't slept much since the night it happened. Since oh, Annie, ... is your mother home? No, she isn't. Do you know when she be back? No, I don't. I'll come over at once. Megan hangs up the phone and rushes downstairs to grab her coat. Her mother sits on the couch in the living room, watching TV. Bill Dole, men of Channel 49 News reporting live from the forest where they'd found the dead teenager days prior. Mother looks up at Megan. Where do you think you're going? She asks. Mother, Annie's in trouble. What's happened now? Our ethics exam in philosophy class. She didn't study for the exam, but I did, so I need to help her study or she fail the exam. Her mother stares, silent, slightly hesitant to say what she wants to say. Next, Megan, yes. Are you lying to me? No. No, I'm not, Megan. She rolls her eyes, sighs. What is it, Mother? Megan, where were you 3 nights ago? 3 nights ago? Yes, 3 nights ago I was in bed, Mother. Where else would I have been? Are you sure you didn't sneak out with Annie? Why would I do something like that? I don't know. Well, I didn't. I was in bed, sleeping. Mother, okay. All right, Megan, I believe you. Thank you, Mother. Megan Avies. She takes her bike from the garage and pedals through the gloom and the fog of the night, past the trees, down the sidewalk lit dim by the street lamps in the fog and catwalks, and down a grassy bike path, an alley between the houses. Oh, if the neighborhood is the crisp autumn air and wind rustles the trees. She rides 6 minutes south until she makes it to Annie's house. The door is open. Megan enters. No light is lit in the house. She finds Annie sobbing in a state of confusion in the kitchen amongst broken glass and dried up blood. My God, shouts Megan as she runs over to help sobbing Annie off the ground and up the stairwell to the bedrooms. It's going to be okay, Annie. It's going to be okay, Annie sobs. Her bleeding leg is dried and crusted, and her eyes are sunken deep like caverns, her skin pale and sweated, almost grayish, her cries lethargic as though the tears took their toll on her physical stamina. Annie bleeds. She leads Annie down the gloomy hallway to her bedroom, into the bathroom tower. Here she runs hot water in the bathtub and helps Annie strip herself out of her tattered dress and into the hot bath water. Annie sobs. She pours lavender soap and washes Annie as she rise. Megan dries Annie's cold, nude body, changes her into her PJs, and guides her to her bedroom. Through the dark azure gloom of the hallway, Annie takes only a few steps from the bedroll, the cold solace of her bare feet damp on the carpet, before she stops in the darkness stiff, as though bearing witness to some grotesque apparition. Megan looks where Annie looks and sees nothing but the darkness. Annie, what is it? Like glass smashing, Annie shrieks bloody murder, bursting Megan's eardrum as she runs, sheerly panicked, shrieking like some raucous banshee, back to the bathroom of the bedroom where she slips on the floor tiles and bangs her shoulder and chin and chips her tooth. Megan comes rushing and screaming Annie, helping the sobbing damsel up, guiding her crying essence to her bedroom. Annie, you've got to get a hold of yourself. Annie says nothing. She's shivering, eyes darting around. Megan lays her on her bed and strokes her hair as she sobs. She's out there, Megan. No, she's not. Yes, she is. No, she's not, Annie. She's dead. You saw it, I saw it. She's dead. Listen to me. She did not come back as a ghost. You hear me, Annie? She did not come back as a ghost. I saw her, Megan, I saw her, in the kitchen. She's mad at us, Megan. She's really mad at us. This is silly. I'm not going crazy, Megan. I know what I saw. I'm not saying that you're crazy. I'm just saying that it doesn't make any sense. You saw Rebecca? Megan laughs. Rebecca's angry at us. She told me it could have been an hallucination. It wasn't, Megan, I swear to God. It wasn't. You said it yourself, Annie. When your mom came in the kitchen, Rebecca was gone and so was the blood. Yeah, the only blood I saw in the kitchen was coming from your leg, Annie. Annie says nothing a moment, stares off into the darkness, and lets her mind wander. Then she realizes something horrible, and her eyes widen, not at the sight of a ghost, but the remembrance of something she'd forgot to tell her friend. Megan, Annie wasn't looking at her. She looked into the darkness. Annie, what is it? I forgot to tell you something, Megan. Now she looks into Megan's eyes with whimpering glumness, begging for mercy, and speaks in a ghostly whisper as though dying. What? What is it? You didn't tell anyone what we did. Did you? Oh, no, Megan. I didn't say a word to anyone about what we did. Only you and I know. Megan smiles. Megan, I forgot to tell you something. What is it? And my bracelet, my gold rose bracelet. What about it? I can't find it, Megan. When did you last have it? Oh God. Megan laughs a nervous titter. Why, you didn't. Annie nods. They walk through the gloom of the night like two glass doll figurines, and Megan holds her flashlight. She left her bike at Annie's house. She holds Annie's hand as they clutch onto one another for warmth in the cold. It must be midnight as the moon hangs above, and the streets are quiet and empty, with houses pitch dark and street lamps dimmed and foggy, as though Megan and Annie were the only two left in this world. They walked several miles north past the school and the library until they made it to the woodlot on the edge of town. Separated from the neighborhood by a multi-lane highway, stood dark and empty. In the gloom, the girls run across. The woods are dark and massive and hilly, sloping down towards a river creek near the W. At her fall, Megan's flashlight leads them further down the woods to the cliff, looking off into the expanse of the valley of trees. This was the spot, Annie remembered, the spot they lured Rebecca. It had been Megan's idea, and Annie played along. Annie stood by the cliff as Megan shone her flashlight over the bushes and the oak tree, looking for Annie's bracelet. The wind blew faint past the trees under the moonlight. Annie asked Rebecca to come. She was closer a friend to Rebecca than Megan was. She and Rebecca had lived on the same street before Rebecca moved away. She had no eye. Sue sneaking out of her house that night, and neither did Annie or Megan. They met at the high school on the football field near the cheerleaders' practice zone and crossed the highway in a trio, sprinting past the blaring horn and bright headlights of a big rig truck, skipping past the behemoth in the nick of time. Megan laughed. Megan, that was stupid, said Rebecca. You could have killed us. Yeah, "But I didn't." Megan said nothing more, just smiled. They walked under moonlight up the path to the cliff, and when they made it they looked over the edge at the expanse, the woods, and the valley of trees dark in the gloom. "It's so beautiful," said Rebecca. Megan and Annie stood behind Rebecca, looking at the back of her head and her beautiful hair. Megan stepped forward and Rebecca heard her, turned around, saw her smile. Megan pushed her off the cliff. Rebecca tripped, fell backwards, wailing in horror. Her bellows grew fainter to the point of silence giving way to a sudden smack and splatter against the ground below. Annie's face dropped from smile to horror as pain, shame, and guilt hit her all at once. "What have we done?" Megan still smiled. Out of the faintness of the silence they heard echoey cries at the bottom of the cliff. Megan stopped smiling. They looked at one another shocked, then ran to peer over the edge. They saw her crawling ant-sized down there, trying to rise as she moaned like some haunted ghoul in a graveyard, shuffling and bleeding all over. Megan looked to Annie with a face of horror. How the lines could she be alive? Annie had no answer. Megan looked at Rebecca way down there at the bottom of the cliff, then looked at Annie and said that they needed to hurry to cement their offering. Annie didn't say anything. Megan peered into her eyes, concerned, as though attempting to look into Annie's mind. Annie, what's wrong?" Annie didn't answer. Megan snapped her fingers in Annie's ear, and Annie looked at her, and Megan said, "Do you hear me, Annie?" Annie nodded. "All right, good, come on then." She took Annie's limp wrist and led her down the hill past the trees until they made it to the bottom of the cliff. They watched Rebecca, Megan fascinated. Annie gazed upon Rebecca blankly. Megan smiled. Rebecca staggered, bleeding from what looked to be everywhere. Her face was all ripped up and puffed, and her mouth was bleeding frothy pink. Her hands destroyed, with her right hand snapped at the wrist, bones sticking out, legs twisted with bones out the knees. She appeared a gory caricature splattered in its own blood. She cried faint and weak and moaned confused horror. Megan rushed over in mock exasperation to help Rebecca. "My God, are you okay? You took quite a fall." Rebecca looked over at Megan slowly with her one eye stared petrified, so wide it looked like she didn't have eyelids. Megan took her by her wrist, the left knee snapped, and flimsy, leading Rebecca back up the way they came. Annie followed. She stood there watching them as Megan stood next to Rebecca, overlooking the valley at the top of the cliff. Her eyes watched as Megan once again guided Rebecca forward towards the edge. Off the cliff, Rebecca fell without screaming, landing with such a violent, ghastly thud that it seemed redundant to even look over and check. Megan smiled at Annie. "She's not getting up this time." Megan stopped smiling once she noticed Annie was not smiling and asked Annie what was wrong. Annie didn't answer. When the police found Rebecca's corpse that afternoon, the medical coroner had assumed Rebecca committed suicide. Her parents were adamant that she hadn't. She couldn't have. She was a happy teenage girl. Why would she kill herself? Medical coroners did, however, take note of the peculiar and ever-apparent indications that somehow Rebecca had managed to fall off the cliff twice. Megan hadn't been at all worried. Annie had been a complete mess thereafter, but her mother hadn't noticed. So she'd been left to deal with the horror alone in the darkness of her bedroom. And from the moment she'd gotten home, she'd felt Rebecca's presence all around her. One night, the night after She smelled blood and heard it dripping and pooling on the carpet in her bedroom closet, saw a reddish glow, heard a hellish hum in the blinders. I found it. Megan yelled to Annie by the bush. Annie came over silent and dull-minded, and Megan looked at her. Her enthusiasm dropped. My God, have you gone into another one of your spells? Annie didn't answer, stared blankly. Megan rose and handed her the bracelet, and Annie took it limply and held it flimsy as though it weren't hers. Hey, Annie says nothing, looks at Megan. If you held the planet in your hands, would you crush it? Annie doesn't answer. Annie, you'd better stop this ass. Train Jalou fact, whatever you're doing. If your mother sees you like this, she may catch on and find out what we did. Would you want that? Would you want her to find out? I thought you said we have powers, says Annie. I did say that, and it's true. But we must be smart, Annie. We have to act reasonably. Do you understand? Annie nods. So would you. Why, wool? Do you want to destroy the planet? Because it's ugly. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. What about the valley and the trees and the moon? Megan smiles, all tainted by the fun we had with Rebecca. Annie looks away from her to the valley at the darkness. We should get going, says Megan. She takes her hand. They turn around. Their eyes pop open. Megan screams first. They both jump back. Kay heels inches from the edge. Rebecca hovers over them, dripping blood, battered up, disfigured, eyes glowing. The girls screaming bloody murder, clutching onto one another. Rebecca smiles. Her jaw drops. Her arm rises, bent in 3 places. She points her gangly, deformed hand and ghastly finger forward at them. Her jaw rips off, falling to the blood below, and she points to the valley of the trees and melts into blood. Megan loses her footing over the edge of the cliff as they cling to one another, shrieking, tripping, falling backwards into the blackness as their echoey screaming grows, faint, giving way to an ominous violent thud. At the bottom, the trees rustle in the wind in the valley. They find the bodies in the morning, after both their mothers find their bedrooms empty. How peculiar, the girls all jumped off the same cliff. Story 2. The affairs of the forest. I am sleeping in the forest. I've been sleeping for a long time. Moonlight seeps in through my closed eyelids, and I awaken slowly, my consciousness shifting through layers of ancient dreams and awareness. I stretch, my bones creaking after lying still for so long. There are many odors to con. Cider, a hint of winter chill in the air, rotting leaves, and the distant smoke of a fire, along with my own animal, musk. It's dark, but I see pine and aspen branches swaying abo vemi, and between them bright dots of light in the sky. After some time, hunger growls in my belly, and I roll over and stand, planting my large paws in the dirt. I shake off the soil, leaves, and pine needles that accumulated in my fur during my rest. I hear my breath and my blood coursing through my body and my slow heartbeat. I tilt my head and listen. Nocturnal creatures are beginning to rustle along the forest floor, and an owl wings past, almost silently. Soon I hear to human voices. Not far away, bro, says one of them. Did you just hear something? I don't know their language, but I understand. You're such a pussy, says the second man. What was it, a ghost? The 2 men are seated around their campfire, drinking beer from bottles. I'm not fucking with you, says the first man. It sounded like, I guess, a bird chirping, a bird ghost. You're so fucking dumb. There's animals out here. It could be a bear. The first man says, he says this like the idea is funny, but I sense the jolt of adrenaline in his body. Bears don't chirp. The second man is laughing, and then the first man jumps to his feet. I just saw something, he says. It looked like something yellow, or I dunno, gold. Well, I guess it's a good thing we have guns, says the second man. Alcohol has numbed his senses. I just saw it again. Its eyes. I saw eyes. I think it's a fucking mountain lion. The second man stands. I'm closer now, and I can smell fear coming from both of them. A lion? Let's fucking kill it, says the second man. That's illegal, man. We can't hunt a lion. And anyway, it's dark as shit. Let's get in the truck. They don't know that I'm here listening. They also do. It know that the lion pacing outside the circle of firelight is young and starving. She's between me and the fire, and she doesn't know I'm here either. She smells the meat cooking over the fire, and the men. The second man has grabbed his shotgun and is aiming into the dark expanse of forest, ignoring his friend's exclamations. They stand with their backs to the fire, gazing around the circle, trying vainly to spot movement. Their hearts pound, one in terror, one in an excitement that borders on lust. A branch snaps, and the men spin to face the sound. Before they can react, the cat springs out of the darkness and lands on the first man, the smaller of the two. He lets out a shocked grunt. She knocks him down, and her paws pin him to the ground. He fights wildly, kicking and trying to claw at the cat's face with one free arm. She growls, and her jaws open and close on the man's shoulder as her claws pierce his chest. He screams. I smell the hot blood and meat. I can taste it as she does. The second man is frozen in place, watching the cougar as she tears enormous bites of flesh from his hunting partner. He must be thinking about fleeing, getting into his truck and driving away or running. Instead, he decides to fight. He raises the gun, aims, and fires a shot, his hands shaking. The slug strikes the trunk of a nearby tree. A spray of bark shows. Hearing the dirt, the cat has now bitten into the first man's neck, and her sharp teeth tear at his tendons and muscles, scraping his vertebrae. Blood pours into the earth. The second man fires again, and here is a meaty thud, followed by a scream of pure rage and pain. The lioness lets go of the first man and runs. I'm not meant to intervene in the affairs of the forest. I am the ancestor of lines of the cats in these mountains. The cougars, lynxes, and bobcats. I have lived for a long time, since there was only one kind of feline. When the cats crossed into this region from their ancient homeland an ocean away, I accompanied them. I have my own purposes, and I haven't interacted directly with my children in many years. But I'm hungry, and the lion is trotting straight toward me through the woods, limping on her heavily wounded hind leg. I appear in front of her. She is terrified, and for a moment she wants to run, but she looks up into my eyes, and I look down into hers. Green gold circles reflecting the light of the moon. You will heal, I say in our language. I'm afraid, she says, the human hurt me. I will take care of him. Go to your shelter and rest. I will join you soon. The second man stumbles blindly and shouts, driven by fear and bloodlust. Part of it is his desire to avenge his friend who's dying next to the fire. Mostly he wishes to assert that he is a man and is smarter and more deadly than any other animal in this forest. He is going in the wrong direction and is nowhere near the land. I lope toward him, covering TH. He distances in a moment. He almost runs into me, stopping short as he perceives my form in the darkness, towering over him. He raises the gun, then lowers it. I communicate with him in a different way than I did with the cat. This isn't your fault, I tell him, and he begins to weep, his mind unable to accept the sound of my voice. It's your kind's fault that my children are going hungry, but this isn't your fault. He drops to his knees. He smells like meat, sweat, dirt, and salt water. My mouth opens. The man looks up, but all he can see is a growing blackness, much darker than the night. I devour him in one bite. Some time later, I gather the body of the first man and carry it in my mouth to the cave where the lioness is resting. We finish our meal together. Story 3. The castle. They woke me with iron teeth. The castle had been crumbling since the year of the long winter, yet it still held its bones high on the ridge above the river, squared Norman stone against TH. He Northumberland wind. Men had chipped at it for centuries. Reivers prized out steps to repair their byres. A justice of the peace took the lead from one turret and blamed the Scots. Lovers bracketed their names in the mortar with knives. None of that reached me. I slept beneath the motte, inside the clay that remembered older gods than the Christ these walls learned to house. Then the excavator came with its bucket, all pistons and appetite, and it bit the last of the gatehouse. Vibration carried down the keep's buried spine. Lime dust sank like snow. My cocoon split, and I breathed again. It is wrong to say I inhaled. There is no breath to me, but there is a taking in. The air tasted of diesel and ground stone. It tasted of oak long spoil and SM. Here of flint that had once been fire. I rose as a draught rises from a church floor when the nave is open after years of neglect. The roof was gone. The sky arched like an empty cup. The operator sat in his glass cabin with headphones pressed to his ears. His name was Callum. His mother would soon ring him to ask if he wanted shepherd's pie for tea. He would not hear the phone in his pocket. He believed this was a good commission. The council had sold the ruin to a developer who promised cottages with slate roofs and parking for 2 cars. Callum liked that the job was clean. Old stone breaks well under an unforgiving bucket. He did not know that the first stones were set here by men who spoke French and prayed in Latin. He did not know those men found Roman slabs in the riverbed and worked them into the vaulting, that the slabs themselves had been stolen from earlier graves. He did not know of the boar who ate in the buttery while raiders drove away the cat, in 1318, nor of the mason who set a corner true while a priest murmured that the north would never settle. He did not know of the summer when plague walked the lanes with quiet feet. He did not know of the winter when Parliament's men slighted the wall and laugh. He did not know because the ruin had turned to scenery long before he was born, and scenery does not demand memory. I knew I was the memory that would not die. I existed before the first facing stones met mortar. I lay with the burial urns, with the gnawed bones of a dog, with a bronze pen that fastened a dead woman. Hair. I have carried a taste of her hair for 1,000 years. When the Norman lord raised his hall, I learned the shape of firelight on oak. When monks came to ask for alms, I learned the scrape of sandals on grit. I learned war, feast, marriage, the tug of a bell rope. I learned names and let them go. My sleep is not forgetting. It is waiting. The bucket swung, the last arch shattered. Callum's mouth formed a simple cheer, the victory you give yourself when a stubborn thing yields. He did not see the white owl that came out of the rubble and flew straight into the afternoon glare. He did not see because the owl was not an owl. It was an old thought, given the form of a creature he had seen in childhood on a hedge by the 68. I showed him what he understood. I did not want to show him anything. I wanted stillness, but the wound was open, and open wounds require attention. My attention is not a choice. It is a thirst. Callum climbed down from the machine. His boots left clear prints in the dust, each tread marking chevrons like the Norman carvings that had stood over the chapel door. He stepped into the gatehouse where the floor had fallen a wall. Wyan paused at the edge because the river ran, thin and brown below. The castle had guarded a ford here. In spring the local children still walked to the shallow and dared each other to lie in the current until their ribs ached. Callum peered down, then across at the far slope where gorse scratched at slate sky. "Keep back, mate," someone called. Another man, high-waist vest, orange hard hat, and safe. Callum waved but took another half-step. His heel slid on powdered lime. He corrected, quick, a neat little dance. I reached without arms and steadied him, not out of kindness, out of habit. All those years, all those edges, and I have kept more than one careless boy upright by the simple will to keep the pattern from breaking. He straightened, rubbed at his hands on his trousers, and laughed. I tasted his laugh. It had a metal note. He was the sort who left shopping trolley coins in his glove box because he liked the feeling of being prepared. He looked into what had been the undercroft. Pigeons clattered and a burst from a dark pocket of stone, an old beam. He flinched and swore. Then he saw the bones. It is true there were bones. As there are always bones, the work had opened a cavity that had never been a cellar yet had kept the shape of one. In the earth a long white curve lay like a smile with broken teeth. Callum thought at once of a cow, and his mind wanted to care about nothing more than reporting the find, so the job would pause. That was when I spoke. I do not have a voice. He heard me as if he had read what his grandmother said the day she died. A simple sentence, leave it be. He froze. He looked left and right. He would tell himself later that a draft through a slit in the wall had made the words. He would not tell anyone, not at first, that the words arrived with a weight in his chest. A pressure like standing in the river with winter water pulled to your middle and the silt sue. Sking your boots, leave it be. Callum took a step back. The highwayman shouted again. A gull cried on the wind. Callum swallowed and raised his hand to say he was coming. He was not made for us. Upper station, he was made for breakfast at 6. The football on Saturday, a small joy when the number at the bottom of an invoice came out even. He climbed into the cab and pulled the lever that swung the bucket. The arm moved, and I moved with it. Drawn as iron filings are drawn to a magnet, he touched stone. I poured through the fractures and found places I had not touched since a womb, and shoes with slashed sides moved across a rush-strewn floor and left wet imprints from rain. Memory crowded me, a marriage feast. a red ribbon around the bride's wrist, a jug chip on the rim that had never poured clean, the taste of barley in air, burned tallow, the shock and rattle when Scottish riders hit the outer gate in the black of the night, a child under the table with a rag doll that had buttons for eyes, one missing jackdaws in the belfry, the bell itself, cast too thin and always a little dull, the steward drunk, naming taxes, the old Lord Pra, easing a piece of venison as if it had been his own. Work, a girl quick with a needle turning the hem of a widow's dress to save cloth, her thimble worn smooth. I could hold it all and but I could not hold back what rose in me, the ache. Long hunger, the place had become a picture for calendars, then a hazard report, then a set of survey pegs. No prayers, no use, no gratitude for shelter, no for either, only beer cans in the ditch. Initials carved with a multi-tool. A boy who fell from the wall in 1954 and broke his ankle and told his mates he had flown. I am not kind. I am not cruel. Those are names for human weather. I am a shape made from everything that has happened here, and the shape had been denied. When Callum brought the bucket down again, I shook the glass of his cab. His headphones slipped. He heard his mother's phone at last. The tune was some song about a summer 30 years gone. He reached to answer. I pressed, and the foe. Any die, he swore again. He lifted the arm and brought it down, and the arch gave way with a groan. It woke jackdaws in the solitary ash and sent them circling. Behind the ash stood the little Roman altar. Someone had fished from the river in 1823 and set against a wall for ornament. The altar toppled and split. Dust rose in a slow column that reminded me of incense. I had not had incense since the last chaplain said Mass before the crown stripped the chapel bare. The scent was lime and diesel and something sweet under it, like crushed thyme. It tasted of everything that had ever fed a fire here. Callum coughed. His chest hurt. He felt a pressure, as of a hand laid flat over his sternum. He pressed his palm there and rubbed. The Highway's men climbed to him and shouted that he was white as a sheet. Callum waved him off. He had pride and would not let him be hauled down from a machine by a mate who would mention it for months. He brought the bucket down once more. In the ribs of the wall a small space opened and made a door. It had been there since the beginning. A mason knew of it. A priest used it. A boy hid in it with a pair. It was not for light. It was for a quick way between rooms when you wanted to be unseen. I went through and found the stair. It had broken, but not in the way stone breaks when only frost works on it. It had broken when a man ran, with trampled candles guttering in his hand, and the rushes caught fire and smoke laid low and thick, and he went down with his head turned, trying to hear his daughter's voice under the roar. I found what was left of the charred rail. I found the curl of iron that had been a hinge. I found the coal that has nothing to do with air. Callum took his hand from his chest. He looked toward the stair as if he had heard someone speak his name there. He had not. He had only felt the moment when a greedy thing wakes and realizes it can feed. He shut off the engine. The sudden quiet lifted the hairs on his arms. He was half ready to laugh at himself and half ready to call the office and say there was a problem with human remains. I let him take one more step toward the stair. He did not see me. No one ever sees me. Not truly. They see what they can manage. He saw a pale child with ash in her hair. He saw a monk with a broken bell rope around his wrist. He saw a woman with a ribbon. Thus, ye were my masks, and they are always enough. I moved toward him with every year inside me. The ground remembered the path. My thirst is not blood and not heat. It is acknowledgment. Speak my name, it says. There is no name to fit me. Callum opened his mouth. He did not scream. He said, very softly, I am sorry. He did not know why he said it. He might have said it for Th. He broke an altar, or for the old wall, or for the boy in 1954, or for the girl with the ribbon, or for nothing at all. He might have said it for himself, for the fact that he had never looked up when he crossed the river at dusk and seen the bats flick like small knives against the last light. Sorry can be a prayer, it can be an offering. I took it as both and drew back. The job was halt. The next day the bones proved to be medieval. The council wrote a careful notice about archaeology and consultation and rescheduling. There would still be cottages, only later. The ruin was already half gone. That did not matter. I am awake. Now I will not sleep while men walk here. The ridge still holds the shape of the keep against the sky. Children will cut across the site on the way to school when the fencing sags. A fox will den under the spoil heap. Callum will change jobs and tell the story once in a pub, then not tell it again, because the telling will wake the pressure in his chest, and he will prefer to forget. He will not forget. He will cross the river sometimes and feel the water tug his legs, though he stands on a sound bridge, and he will not know why. It is enough. I do not need them to know I am both keeper and ruin. I do not need their fear. I only need what all old places need. I need to be carried in the mouth like a well-worn word. I am the castle's last room. Enter if you must. Leave if you can. Story 4, 8966. The muffled sounds of suburbia shadowed the growing terrors in his heart. Graham sat on his yellow armchair in his colonial-style cottage, shaking as he held his coffee. His wife, Audrey, hummed an old tune in the kitchen, making his favorite stew. To anyone else, this was a state of sweet domestic bliss. However, Graham stared into the fire and dwelled on the thoughts of a tormenting entity. It was a dark figure, with an innocence a person couldn't describe. Graham's mind revolved around the daunting eyes of a young figure. Something about him was so familiar that Graham's brain couldn't touch. He drank a sip of his coffee and coughed as he stared at an odd carving on his wrist. The numbers were etched into his wrist. 8966. You okay, Graham? His wife asked him, peering out the small pass-through with a warm smile on her face. The boy, he mumbled. What boy? Audrey asked with confusion in her voice. Never mind, just work stuff, he replied, while his wife nodded with a look of perplexity on her face. He knew Audrey didn't buy the work stuff. Excuse, she's going to ask him at night, when he's vulnerable. Audrey was dear to Graham, as he lost his parents and his brother. His brother's wife and son all died 2 years ago in a car accident. Considered. Hearing this, Audrey was the only person left for Graham. Her comfort, sweet sorrow, and presence relieved him. However, she didn't know about the shadow that was tormenting his life. Questione. Ng his sanity, the shadow, with a name of 8966. Graham was unsure of how this boy came into his life, as his presence felt unreal. His appearance was slow but intriguing with menacing hints. SCR. Hatches on car, broken windows, unlocked doors, a horror movie that left you in chills. The bow was there for only about a week, but to Graham it felt like an eternity had passed. Audrey disrupted his thoughts, stating, "Graham, I'm gonna go fetch some garlic powder from the store." "Okay, I'll be back in a few minutes." "No, Graham." I instantly hopped out of his armchair, watching his hands tremble, not feeling the hot tea spill on his pale, numb fingers. Audrey looked bewildered by the sudden reaction. She slowly put down the car keys on the table. "Okay, how about you sit down?" she said slowly as she grabbed his hand and sat him down. She kneeled down beside him and stroked his hand with cold water. She then said, "What's going on? You reacting unusual, and I'm worried." Graham then glanced at the door, and there he was, a boy glaring at him. He was the same light complexion, yet he looked gray with a haunting feature looming over him. Terrifier. NG. Small, silent. Graham flinched and rubbed his eyes. When he opened them, the boa was gone. Graham looked around everywhere, and so did Audrey. Graham forced a smile to his wife. "Nothing. My boss piles so much work that it's hard to keep track of. Tates," he said that too quickly. His body language and tone of voice didn't satisfy Audrey, so she sighed, got up and replied, "How about you go wash your face? It'll help." He nodded and slowly walked to the bathroom, feeling possessed by his subconscious. As he stood in front of the mirror, he bent down and washed his face with the cool water that glided across his dry face. As he looked up, the boy's dim face was reflected. He jumped back, landing in the bathtub, trying to collect his arms and legs. Graham struggled to grab a hold of anything. He soaked his pants as he turned on the tub accidentally when he reached up and got a razor. The boy was on the sink counter, sitting with his hands resting in his lap. He had dirty blonde hair and a red shirt with the staggered numbers on it in white. 8,966. His hazel eyes observed Graham, and every inch of his movement as Graham pointed the razor at the boy like a knife. The boy smirked. Then Graham shut his eyes. He breathed frantically, his heart racing against his chest, until he felt an eerie silence, deafening. It was a silence that made the atmosphere sneeze, and he could almost hear the terror in his heart that raced through to get out. As he opened a wink, a terrible scream of the boy startled him. He jumps out, waves his hands like a PU, and bolts out the bathroom door with his eyes shut. He blindly stumbled through the halls, holding his head as he leaned against the wall. He breathed, taking deep breaths as he felt safe outside of the bathroom. Graham bolted to the kitchen and stared at his wife, relieved she was okay. She looked at him, eyebrows raised as she was setting dinner on the table. Her eyes darted to his soaking wet pants as they dripped on the carpet floor. "You swam to the bathroom?" she asked him, jokingly. He shook his head and smiled lightly as he sat down at the table. All of a sudden, Audrey asked, "Is this about that family?" Graham's mind was driven by this unusual question. "What family?" he asked in a deep voice as he took a sip of the stew. It didn't taste tea. He said the metallic taste of saliva and anxiety in his mouth destroyed the enjoyment of the stew. "Oh, you know, just the usual cases. A woman dies here, a man dies there. This time, a whole family died." Audrey said as she poured some stew into her bowl and shook her head. Graham's mind was in a state of fog, and he took off his glasses to rub his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, bewildering Audrey. She stopped the spoon that was about to go into her mouth and put it down. "Graham, we've been talking about this for months, you know, the unusual cases of people dying in car accidents, the one your brother was involved in." As she said that, Graham put a spoonful of the stew in his mouth, and he immediately spat it out. The metallic tang was not the stew. It was the taste of blood he ate. He looked at his bowl and saw it was full of bright red liquid. Audrey stood up, shaking as she came around to help her husband. He shook her off and rushed to his room higher. As temperature dropped and he felt he was being watched, he heard a whisper, "Bennett." He looked around and got up to close the blinds. When he returned, he saw the boy on his bed. Graham felt a little empty in his throat. He felt nauseous. He choked. A crawling sensation in his throat. Graham coughed up a cockroach. He ran to the guest room and tried to shut his eyes, ignoring the ongoing whispers as Graham tried to drift off. His wife was in the dining area, frozen where she stood. She thought about the horrific cases that took place, and she craved to know more. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. That night Crane didn't sleep, and though Audrey insisted he stayed home today, he would rather lethargically go to work surrounded by people than home alone with a haunting, demonized child. As G.R. Hayham took the bus to work, Audrey took the car to the local hospital. She attempted to rule out the reason for her husband's behavior. As she stood behind the line of the front desk, she thought about the pictures she had seen on the news. A dead woman, a child holding a toe, or even a man hugging his family to protect them. These weren't linked to her husband's actions, but she had a gut feeling that they did. "Move it, lady," a man behind her said, urging her to go forward. Audrey rushed to the front desk. "Last name," the woman said. "Sorry." Audrey responded. The woman looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "You're here to visit someone, right?" Yes." "Okay. What's their last name?" "I am not sure," Audrey said, not exactly sure why she was here. The woman looked at her and glanced at the person behind her. "Okay. Well, Mom, why you figure that out, I'll have you take a seat so I can assist the next person." And before Audrey protested, the man behind her hurriedly bumped past her and started to talk with the woman. She sighed and waited, unsure, until a man who was shivering stumbled into the entrance area. He rushed to the empty desk and said, "The last name is Bennett. First name Harper. I need to see my friend." "Okay, sir, hang on." The woman typed on her keyboard and replied, "They are en route to be, but they just went through a traumatic car accident, so you need to stay calm. I will have a nurse come to assist you in the room, so you can have a seat until then. Car accident, N.I.D. No, please. I can't wait any longer. Oh my God. I just realized I needed to see Harper as well. And I am so glad I ran into you." Audrey winked at the man as he looked at her compare. Usually, she signaled to him with her eyebrows to go along with it, and he slowly nodded, saying, "Yes, it's great to see you too." The woman was already busy with another person at the front desk, so Audrey rolled her eyes and slipped past, making her way into the hallways with this man. "Who are you again?" The man asked her as they rushed towards the room, "Audrey, I wanted to figure out some things about the accidents. They're so weird, I know. I work with the police department, and when the report came in with my best friend's name on it, I came straight from the station," the man stated, sparking an idea inside Audrey. "Hold on. You're a police officer?" she asked him, stopping in the middle of the hall. "Yes. Why, you must know a lot about these cases then." The man nodded at her response and replied, "I do. But why do you care?" Audrey could tell the man didn't trust her, and she couldn't blame him. "My husband is going through a lot right now. He lost his brother to an accident a couple of years ago, and I don't know, but something is off with him lately." The man nodded and gestured to her to continue walking towards the room. The bold white letters outside the room stated to be, and they walked past the curtains inside. Audrey gasped and clutched her hand to her mouth, and the man sobbed next to the patient's bed. She was wrapped in bandages so no one could make out her figure, but anyone could tell that she was disfigured brutally. She lightly opened her eyes, and her breathing was very shallow. The man tried making a small conversation with her, so Audrey stepped outside the curtains out of respect. She walked around the room and noticed the patient's file next to the entrance door. She took it out, and her heart dropped when she saw this patient on the road, covered in blood. Beside her was a white truck with red stripes imprinted on it. As Audrey flipped through the images, she saw her blue car absolutely destroyed, and her family in the next few images who were reported dead. Audrey wiped a tear off her soft face, and she threw the file over when she heard a piercing scream. She hurried inside the curtains and saw the woman struggling in the bed, ripping off her IVs and tubes, screaming with as much capacity as she had in her lungs. The man got up and looked horrified at her. As the nurses came in frantically to try to assist her, words were being constantly yelled by the patient. She rolled in her bed and kicked her legs, breaking one of the nurses' jaws. Audrey rushed out of the room, urging the man to come out as well, but he shook his head and was in shock at the sight of his best friend. "Go away," the woman kept yelling and screaming until it just ended. The screams stopped, the kicking settled, and everyone's breathing slowed down. All you could hear was the long beep coming from the monitor. The man broke down in tears, and the nurse assisted him outside. Along with me, the man refused to go into a room. He just bolted out the entrance doors and sat on the bench outside. Audrey sat down beside him and said, "Can I suggest something? Many people are going through the same thing, and I think there is some linkage between these cases, even with my husband. Can you take me down to the station and show me some of these files, please?" The man shook his head at Audrey's suggestion and replied, "That information is confidential, and I could risk my job." "Okay, but if you don't show me, you can also risk a life. I think that's a bit more important here. I need to know. I think we could somehow connect it to what's going on," Audrey pleaded. For some reason, the face of that patient while she was screaming was familiar. It was the same look on her husband's face when he thought he saw something. The man nodded, and they made their way to the station. Graham's day wreck was even more traumatizing. Disappearing files, torn work, and his computer fried. He continued seeing the boy in his office, so he put his head down. He fell asleep, and when he woke up he would find scratches on his hands. He looked up and jumped back. The boy was right next to him. Out of horror, he accidentally spilled boiling tea on himself and refused to eat anything after last night. He just hoped his wife was able to fix whatever was going on, and so Audrey appeared at the station, where the man presented her with the recent files discreetly. Name's Alfred. These are the most recent looks, and fortunately, every time we appear at the scene, the driver is never present. There isn't anyone in there, and the truck just mysteriously vanishes later. Then it reappears, killing another family. As Audrey skimmed through the horrid pictures, she noticed something odd. Every family member had at least one person whose last name was Bennett. That was the moment where Audrey's heart stopped. Look at this: Bennett, Andrew Bennett, Martha Bennett. There are so many. So the killer has something against the Bennetts? Alfred asked, raising an eyebrow. She didn't know, but what Audrey did know was that her husband's name was Graham Bennett. She rushed inside the car, thanked Alfred, and tried calling Graham. Call forwarded, she groaned, and slowly drove, keeping an eye out for any trucks. She gracefully stopped her car outside the office and saw him stepping out, looking weary. Audrey, he asked, looking confused. Get in the car, Audrey yelled, unlocking the door. What the hell is going on? He asked her, as she frantically drove around town. To get home hurriedly, she pressed her foot, the engine roaring to life and the accelerator kissing the ground. The golden street lights faded into a blur, and the wind tore through the windows, flipping our hair back. I'll explain later. All I care now is that you are being haunted by something, and it's killing all of your generations. Gray looked at her, bewildered, and Audrey gulped, continuing, we are going to go home, and we are never going to step foot in a car again. Graham slowly replied, Audrey, we are already in one. Shit, Audrey replied. She then saw a white true CK with red stripes parked in a dark lot. No driver, no light, silence. Graham then screamed when he saw the kid in the middle of the road. Audrey pressed the brakes, the tires fighting against the road as the car jolted forward. Violently. What? Audrey asked, breathing heavily. Graham looked forward, his eyes bulging. The child, with the same numbers on his shirt labeled 8,966, was staring at him, piercing into his Yes, his heart felt uneasy, and his lips trembled as he pointed ahead of him. The boy stood, grinning. Audrey couldn't see anything, so she pressed the accelerator towards where Graham was pointing. We need to get. The impact was sudden. It was violent. The car jolted sideways, and the once quiet road turned into harsh metal scratching against each other. The world spun, and Graham's mind echoed. Graham's face pressed against the window, breaking. The glass pierced his jaw, and Audrey's screams were swallowed by the roar of the crash. He laid on the road, his hand slit by a deep cut. Blood ran out of him from his chest. Feeling all life spill out, his eyes flickered open, and he saw the boy. 8,966. Graham spoke in a slow and weary voice. Please. The boy smirked and said, in my accident, the driver was of yours. 1 hit, 2 lives gone. I was 6. This curse wasn't meant for you, but for your name. Please, he pleaded, looking at the white truck with red stripes. Audrey begged from behind the truck, screaming Graham's name. Sirens wailed, and people yelled. Chaos was embedded on the street. Lured by the sight of this boy, his blood drained. He begged the boy, please, save my wife. He looked and just watched his body run out of life. Smiling, the boy stared at Graham as his body drained agonizingly, and in the last few seconds of his life, he saw the number on the boy's shirt change from 8,966 to a new number, 8,967. Story 5. The cursor blinks, the cursor blinks. 2:47 a.m. Michaela's hands hover over the keyboard, not quite touching, as if the keys might burn her or save her. She isn't sure which. The writing community's weekly prompt glows on her second monitor. Write a story about a character who is haunted by something or someone. She's read Clive Barker since she was 15. She knows haunting. She knows how desire and dread weave together until you can't tell which thread is which. But knowing and doing are different animals. And right now, sitting in her apartment with the radiator ticking and the street below silent, the distance between them feels infinite. She's been writing for years. Notebooks full, lines of stories, hard drives cluttered with drafts, but she's never shared anything. Not really. Not with strangers who might actually read it, might actually judge it, might actually see her. Her fingers drop to the keys. She writes about a woman haunted by the smell of her grandmother's perfume, safe, nostalgic. She structures it like a prose poem. All careful line breaks and measured grief. Nothing too raw, nothing that bleeds by 4 a.m. She has 1,200 words that don't embarrass her and that feels like a miracle. She reads it 3 times, considers deleting it, reads it again, then before she can stop herself, before the fear can calcify into paralysis, she hits submit. She closes the laptop and crawls into bed as the sky begins to gray. The morning comes with its usual weight. Michaela wakes at 10 a.m., feeling like she's been buried alive. The sun through the curtains is an accusation. She knows she needs to get up, shower, eat, pretend to be a functional human, but her body is a sandbag, her mind a fog bank. This is the tax for the 3 a.m. high, the payment for those hours when her brain felt electric and possible. She reaches for her phone, 3 notifications from the writing community. Her heart does something complicated. The first comment is from someone named Darkrose87. Beautiful imagery, the perfume detail absolutely gutted me. The second is from Writing by Moonlight. This is so delicate and haunting. More, please. The third is just an emoji, a purple heart, but it's from someone Cal, Led Barker fan, and that username alone makes her throat tight. She reads them again and again, and for the first time in 3 days, she feels something other than the gray crush of worthlessness. She feels seen. She feels like maybe, just maybe, she isn't wasting her life. She gets out of bed. The second week, she writes about a girl who finds her mother's suicide note why years after the fact, tucked inside a copy of The Turn of the Screw. It's closer to the bone. It's based on something that almost happened, a parallel universe version of her own life where her mother made a different choice. She writes it in a single sitting, 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., her hands shaking by the end, tears on her keyboard. She doesn't know if it's code. She only knows it's true, and that sidelong way fiction can be true. She posts it. Goes to bed, wakes up to 17 comments, Darkrose87. I'm speechless. This is devastating and perfect. Writing by moonlight. You have a gift. Seriously, don't stop. Barker fan. Clive would be proud. This is the kind of story that lives in your chest afterward. There are others. Strangers pouring kindness into her inbox, telling her they felt it, they got it, they want more. She sits at her kitchen table with cold coffee and reads every word 3 times, and she feels something dangerous blooming in her chest. Hope, ambition, the belief that maybe she can actually do this. Maybe she can be the writer she's always dreamed of being. She's still writing the high when her phone rings on Thursday. Her brother's voice is careful, too careful. Michaela, it's Dad. He had a stroke. The world tilts. She hears the rest through water. He's in the ICU. He's stable. They don't know how bad it is. Yet they'll know more in a few days. Her brother is flying out. Her sister is driving up. Can Michaela come? She looks at her bank account. $147. Rent is due in a week. The flight is $500 minimum. I'll see what I can do, she says, and hates herself for the day's fracture. Monday she wakes up and can't remember if she slept. Tuesday disappears entirely. Wednesday she writes for 6 hours straight. A story that starts at the end and works backward, a man unraveling his own life in reverse. And it's chaotic, structurally insane, probably unreadable. But she can't stop. She's cry. She writes. She doesn't know why, or she knows exactly why. 4 a.m. submit. Bed. Morning. The weight, the gray. Her father is dying and she's writing stories, and she doesn't know which matters more, and that thought alone makes her want to disappear. She checks her phone for comments on the reverse story. Dark Rose 87 says it's ambitious, but hard to follow. Writing. A Moonlight says she's worried. Barker fan says, this feels like you're in pain. I hope you're okay. She's not okay. She doesn't know how to be okay. Her father is 800 miles away and he can't afford to see him, and every time she closes her eyes, she sees him alone in a hospital bed, and she can't breathe, can't think, can't. She opens her laptop. 2 a.m. She writes the end. Next week is better. She writes a witch story, a woman who burns her own house down and rises from the ashes with a garden growing in her palms. It's about redemption. It's about survival. It's about everything she needs to believe is possible. She writes it in 3 nights, careful and deliberate, and when she posts it, she feels like maybe she's climbing out of the hole. Dark Rose 87. Yes, this is the me, Kayla, I was hoping to see again. Writing by moonlight. Gorgeous, you're back. Barker fan. The garden metaphor is everything. And then Friday, her brother calls. Dad's giving up. His voice cracks. He's talking about hospice. He doesn't want to fight anymore. Spiral. That's the only word for it. She doesn't sleep, or she sleeps for 16 hours. Time is meaningless. Her apartment is a disaster. Dishes in the sink, growing architecture. She writes at 3 a.m. She writes at 10 a.m. She writes a story about a woman who's so broken she can't remember her own name. The woman wanders through a city that keeps changing shape. The buildings lean, the streets fold. Nothing makes sense because nothing makes sense. She posts it. Doesn't read it first. Can't. She checks the comments the next day. 5, only 5. Dark Rose 87. I'm not sure what you're going for here, but I hope you're taking care of yourself. Writing by moonlight. Michaela, please message if you need to talk. Barker fan. This feels like you're disappearing. Please don't disappear. To other people, leave brief, polite comments that feel like pity. She closes the laptop. She doesn't cry. She's past crying, but she keeps writing. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about mania, about depression, about the roller coaster of bipolar 2. Sometimes the only thing that keeps you tethered to the world is the thing you can't stop doing, even when it's 3 a.m. and you're exhausted and your father is dying and you didn't get to say goodbye and your family is lying around him while you're stuck here, broke and useless. Even then, the story matters, the words matter. The act of creation, of making something from nothing, of pouring your broke and self onto the page and hoping someone, anyone, will understand it matters. She writes every night. The stories get stranger, tighter, more desperate. A man who eats his own memories, a child who drowns in a bathtub that's actually an ocean, a woman who realizes she's been dead for years. She doesn't know if they're good. She doesn't care. She just writes. Dark Rose 87 comments on very one. Writing by moonlight comments on everyone. Barker fan comments on everyone. They don't always love the stories, but they show up, they read. They tell her they're there. The call. Comey's on a Tuesday. Her sister, he changed his mind. Her voice is thick with exhausted relief. We all flew out. We talk to him. He's going to keep fighting. Michaela sits on her kitchen floor with the phone pressed to her ear. That's amazing. We told him about everyone who wanted him to stay. About you, I showed him your messages. Michaela's messages, the ones she sent because she couldn't be there, the ones that felt like confessions shouted into a void. He wants to talk to you when he's stronger, her sister says. Okay, Michaela whispers. She hangs up. She should feel relief. She should feel joy. Her father is going to live. Her family saved him, but she wasn't there. She didn't save him, they did, and she doesn't know if that makes her grateful or gutted. So she feels both, high and low crashing together, and she sits on her kitchen floor until the sun goes down and the dark comes back. 3 a.m. She's at our desk. She's always at her desk now. The prompt from 2 weeks ago is still pinned. Make a character's addiction or obsession an important element of your story. She starts typing. This time, she tells about a writer, a woman who can't stop writing even when the world is falling apart, who writes through grief and exhaustion and the kind of pain that should stop you cold, who finds that the act of creation is the only thing that makes sense, the only thing that feels like survival, who doesn't know if she's writing to save herself or because she's too broken to stop. She writes till dawn. She reads it once. She posts it. The comments come fast. Dark Rose 87. This is it. This is the one. I felt every word. Writing by moonlight. You're not broken. You're a writer. This is what we do. Barker fan. This is the most honest thing I've read in years. Thank you for sharing it. Thank you for staying. Michaela reads them through blurred vision. She doesn't know if she's crying from exhaustion or gratitude or something else entirely. She doesn't know if the writing saved her or if she saved herself by writing. She doesn't know if there's a difference. What she can. How's is this? Her father is alive. She is alive, and she has written 7 stories in 7 weeks, each one a fragment of her shattered self, each one a message in a bottle thrown into the digital void. And 3 strangers caught them. 3 strangers said, I see you. Keep going, the morning comes. The weight is still there, it's always there, but today it's a little lighter. Michaela makes coffee. She opens her laptop. She looks at the new prompt. Write a story about hope in unexpected places. She smiles. Not a big smile, just the edge of one. She starts typing. Outside, the sun rises over the city, and somewhere in another time zone, her father is waking up too. They're both still here, still fighting, still breathing. The cursor blinks. She writes Story 6, Silas Haven. If someone had told Emmy Wickham sure would smell like a wet ghost crawling inside my nostrils, I would have stayed on the bus. The scent envelopes every breath. Evie with the must of seaweed and the lingering taint of an unlucky shipwreck. Instead, I step off with Bronwyn, Duncan, and Damien, and breathe in a combination of salt, rotting kelp, and the faint sea Michael tang of old paint surrendering to the sea. The fog sits low, as if the sky has given up and is now squatting over the town. Bronwyn's short red bob is already frizzing sideways, freckles glowing like constellations across her cheeks. Her green eyes widen with delight at the sight of the shoreline, as if she's looking at a promising patient. This is perfect, she says. I look around, the fog curling with a sea breeze that feels as heavy as a heart waiting to break. The silence is palpable, the kind you could slice with a knife. An old boat creaks in the distance, its echo haunting the shoreline. It's haunted, I say. Atmospheric, she counters, full of tetanus. Rust is charming. I stare at her, her smile grows. She is unstoppable. Duncan and Damien, the 6-foot blonde twins who look like someone copy-pasted trouble, stand behind us. Damien has already unzipped his hoodie because he refuses to believe the world gets cold. Duncan is glaring at tea. He fogged like he wants to fight it. Technically, the 4 of us met in college because all our parents hated us in similar frequencies. Neglect, disappointment, or strategic absences. Trauma bonding is underrated. This place looks like a seafood restaurant that never emotionally recovered from something I say. Bronwyn claps her hands. Great, let's go find it. Galley sits on the edge of the beach, perched above rocks like it's avoiding paying rent directly to the ocean. Its blue paint flakes off in pieces the size of potato chips. Someone once attempted to draw a happy sea horse on the sign. Now it looks like the seahorse has seen things. Inside, the restaurant is dark, silent, and cold in a way cold shouldn't be. Not crisp, more like old breath. Our living space is upstairs. A single hallway, 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and a kitchenette that looks like it regrets ever being installed. We moved in with 4 forks, 1 mattress, 2 IOTs. I am the one who notices it first. The smell, not the lemon disinfectant the previous tenants used to pretend cleaning happened. Not even the faint wetwood undertone. This is different, like cooked onions that were left on low heat too long, like broth cooling in an abandoned pot. Something warm and something sad. Do you guys smell that? I ask. Damien lifts his head from flopping dramatically on the couch. Yeah, that's the dying couch cushions. They've seen horror. No, I say food. Duncan sniffs the air. Nitara, nothing here has been cooked since the Carter administration. Bronwyn tosses her duffel on the table. Relax, the place is old. Old places smell like old things. I'm not convinced. But I don't argue yet. We explored the upstairs. Bronwyn insists the restaurant attic might have cheap furniture or haunted treasure. I vote no. Damien votes yes. Duncan votes, God, please don't make me. The attic hatch groans when we pull it open. The air that spills down smells like dust, salt, and something sharp like someone stored storms in here. Bronwyn climbs first. I follow. The attic is a cramped triangle of shadow and forgot in objects, tangled fishing nets, a broken lantern, a knocked-over coat rack that scared the souls out of us, and the book. It sits half-buried under a stack of soggy magazines, dead spiders, and disappointment. It's thick, leather-bound, damp around the edges. The cover is embossed with swirling shapes that might have been decorative or might have been warning signs, hard to tell with. Old things, I poke it with my foot. Guys, I say this book smells like fear and seaweed. Bronwyn perks up like a raccoon encountering a shiny object. Old, cool, keep it. Bronwyn, those are the two worst reasons to keep anything. She already has it in her hands. Duncan climbs up behind us and takes it. Flipping to the first page, the handwriting is cramped, uneven, and a little desperate. A summoning ritual. We all stare at him. He shrugs. It's written in cursive. Only cursed things are written in cursive. Bronwyn grins, like she wants the curse to happen. I glare at her. If we die, I want everyone to know it was your fault. We don't summon anything. We don't chant anything. We don't even light candles. All we do is leave the book on the table while unpacking. The first weird thing happens that night. A sound from downstairs in the restaurant. A small sound, soft, barely there. Tap, not footsteps. More like someone flicking the metal countertop with their nail. Duncan freezes. Did you hear that? No, I lie. Yes, he says. Damien pokes his head out of the bathroom. Who's tapping Morse code at midnight? Bronwyn shrugs. Probably the pipes. Old buildings like to make death threats. But I heard it again, tap, and the smell warm onions, nearing broth, cooking. A kitchen that hasn't been touched in years is cooking. The next day is foggy, colder than it should be. The restaurant creaks in a way that feels intentional. Damien tries to fix a cabinet hinge and drops his wrench because he hears something. A humming, a low, tuneless hum, a child's hum. Like someone trying to remember a lullaby. Guys, he whispers, is one of you practicing for a horror movie audition? We all shake our heads. The humming continues for 3 full minutes. Bronwyn pretends it's totally fine, but she keeps glancing at the stairway to the restaurant below. That evening, I'm cooking rice when I noticed condensation on the kitchen window. A fog patch, and in the center of it, a handprint, small, wet, pressed from the inside. I drop the spoon. Bronwyn walks in, follows my gaze, and swallows. Damien walks in, sees it, screams a high note, and runs out. Duncan says, that's definitely a ghost. Bronwyn says, we don't jump to conclusions, but she won't touch the window. I shower and step into the hallway wrapped in a towel. The lights flicker once, twice. Then a shadow glides across the far wall, not shapely. Chaos, too small, too thin, too fast. I freeze. Nitara, Bronwyn calls. I swallow. Throat tight. I think we have a visitor. The day after the handprint, the restaurant feels alive. The wooden floorboards groan under our steps. The walls breathe faintly, expanding and contracting like they're sighing. Every time we turn a corner, the light flickers like the bulbs themselves are uncertain whether they want to work or vanish. Entirely, I'm chopping vegetables for dinner. The knife clicks against the cutting board rhythmically. The smell of onions and garlic curls in the kitchen air, warm and homey, but not enough to calm. Diani's crawling over my shoulders. Damien leans over my shoulder, frowning. Did you just see the cupboard move? I glance up. The cupboard door that was closed a second ago is now slightly ajar. Probably the wine, I say, though the windows are all shut tight. Or a ghost, Duncan mutters from the hall. His tone is half sarcastic, half serious, and I don't know if he's joking or not. Bronwyn just rolls her eyes. Stop being dramatic, she says, though her freckled face tightens as she peers at the cupboard. I can see the tension behind her casual words. I feel it too. The restaurant watching us, patient, waiting. Later, Damien comes running upstairs, panicked. There's a wet footprint in the hall. He shouts. I freeze. Our hallway has no open windows. No one's been outside. The rain is coming down in a drizzle, but it's still early evening. I step closer. The footprint is small, muddy, and wrong. It doesn't match anyone in the apartment. It points toward the kitchen. Not funny, Duncan says flatly. Someone is in the house. Yeah, Damien AGR. But who's making the pot of soup when it's 3 degrees outside and no one knows how to cook? Bronwyn snatches a flashlight from the counter. We check calmly. I grip my own flashlight. My stomach churns. There's a metallic scent in the air, coppery, like old coins, but sharper. My skin pricks. Someone or something is here. The hallway is empty. The kitchen is empty, and then we hear it, the faint tea scrape, like a pan sliding across stone. We sit together in the living area, trying to convince ourselves it's nothing. Damien jokes, Duncan frowns, Bronwyn mutters about old buildings being weird, and then the whisper comes, soft, almost shy. Nitara, I jerk. What? Who said that? No one responds. The 4 of us freeze. Damien laughs nervously. Probably the wind, right? Wine has a name now. Bronwyn tightens her grip on the book. Don't dismiss it. I've been thinking. This book isn't just recipes. It's aware. I swallow my through. It feels dry, aware, like haunted. Yeah, she says softly, like it wants something. And then the kitchen smells of broth. Not old broth. Fresh, warm, but there's no stove on, no simmering pot. Nothing but us 4, standing frozen. Do you smell that? I whisper. Yes. Bronwyn says, voice low. Her freckled face looks serious for the first time. It's cooking. I'm angry. Back at the apartment, the book is on the table. I hesitate, but my curiosity wins. A page flips slowly without wind. I catch a glimpse of a boy in the margin, drawn roughly. A pale, hollow-cheeked face, eyes too big. He seems hungry. The hairs on my arms stand up. Bronwyn sees me staring. You see him too, right? Yes, I whisper. He's there, and he's not waiting for us to open the book to exist, Bronwyn says. Her voice trembles a little, though she tries to stay composed. The room smells of fresh bread, soup, and something old, like soil and seaweed mixed. Something is in the house, watching, waiting, Hungry the hauntings are, small but constant. No one sleeps properly. Arguments flare. Duncan snaps at Damian for moving things invisible hands don't need to talk. Damian yells back, "You're being dramatic because your hair isn't blowing in the haunted wind." Bronwyn lectures us both. "Stop being idiots. We have a real problem here." I try to meditate. My patience is running thin, my hair damp from foggy windows, smelling faintly of salt and fear. Humor fights for its place among the tension. Damian tripping over a ghost, Duncan yelling at a cupboard, Braun, when rolling her eyes at everyone. This is how we survive. But at night, when the wind presses against the glass, when the lights flicker and the smell of broth fills the air, we know tea. A real problem is still waiting. Silas, we found out the ghost's name from the book is here, and he's hungry. The fog presses against the windows like a living thing, dragging the smell of wet seaweed and salt into the room. The air is thick. My lungs feel full of mist. I wake to a thump from the kitchen. "Duncan?" I mumble. "Stop eating at 3 a.m. No answer. Just the sound of fast, desperate chewing. I creep down the hall, barefoot, each floorboard groaning under my weight. The kitchen light flickers, throwing long shadows over the counters. My stomach twists. It isn't Duncan. It's Bronwyn. Her green eyes are gone, replaced by something black and bottomless. Dares streak her freckled cheeks. She's shoveling cold rice into her mouth like it's the last me, all she ever have. "Bronwyn," I whisper. No reply, just quiet, ragged sobs between bites. Her red bob sticks to her damp forehead. The metallic scent of blood and salt fills my nose. I freeze tea and do the only thing that seems sane. I grab a baguette and swing. "How?" she yells in a normal voice. Then the black returns, overlaying her words. I am so hungry. I have always been hungry." Duncan bursts in with a wrench. Damian yells, "Is this a possession?" Bronwyn grabs a lemon and tries to eat it whole. I screamed. "Stop eating sour tea." Hangs while possessed. The room smells like rice, lemon, and despair. Over the next few nights, the pattern repeats. One of us possessed, always crying, always eating, whispering the same words. "I am so hungry. I have always been hungry." We try everything. Salt circles, sage yelling at the fog, threats, even jazz music. Nothing works. I lie awake, listening to the building groan. Fog coils a rule, and the windows, somewhere below, the kitchen hums with invisible cooking. Duncan glares at me one night. "Why is it always you who notices the weird stuff first?" "Because I smell it before it eats you," I reply, teeth chattering. Bronwyn groans from the couch, hands shaking, hugging her knees. Even possessed, she somehow looks like she's hiding in herself. Damian tries humor. "Do ghosts burn calories?" I throw a spoon at him. The twins start snapping at each other under the pressure. Bronwyn pinches the bridge of her nose. "You two are literally useless right now." I sigh. My stomach twists, a mix of fear and exhaustion. We are losing control. The house feels alive, the shadows twitching, the walls breathing. The book sits on the table like a taunt, leather creaking faintly, smelling faintly of salt and something old, like buried things no one should dig up. One night I couldn't sleep. The fog presses against my window. I see a figure at the edge of the lighthouse cliff, a boy pale with white, sorrowful eyes. He's watching us, hungry. I stumble backward. Bronwyn is beside me, still shivering from possession. He's there, I whisper. Yes, Bronwyn says, voice soft. He's not waiting for us to open the book. He's already here. The kitchen smells of broth and bread again. Warm, inviting, yet terrifying. The fog presses closer. I feel it in my bones. He's hungry for more than food. Days blur into nights. Sleep is a memory. Tension stretches between us like a taut rope. Duncan refuses to touch anything remotely haunted. Damir mocks everything to cope, but jumps at shadows. Bronwyn tries to be in charge, but her confidence cracks. I try to keep everyone sane, silently panicking. We realize Silas doesn't just haunt us, he manipulates the environment. He cooks, he moves things, he whispers, he waits, and he is always hungry. By the fourth night, possession has taken a toll. Bronwyn and sobs echo in the house, echoing ours. The twins argue. I can barely think. I sit in the corner, listening to the faint scraping of something across the floorboards. My chest tightens. I feel his eyes on me. I am so hungry. Not from his mouth this time, not fully. From somewhere behind the walls, the fog, the very building itself. I shiver, fear, compass, iron, exhaustion, and something resembling anger churn inside. Emmy, we are trapped between terror and sympathy. Bronwyn finally says, voice small but firm, okay, we have to destroy the book. Damir cradles it like a baby, but what if we need one of the recipes? Damir, I say, exasperated, you cannot cook cursed sea witch chowders. He sighs like he crushed his culinary soul. We tear the book apart, page by page. Salt, ink, and paper dust cling to our hands. Outside, the ocean swallows the pages with soft, gulping sounds. We stand there, chest heaving, listening to the tide. We think it's over. We do not know that. Silas is patient. He waits. He hungers. A week later, there's a knock at the door. I freeze, heart thudding. No one ever knocks. A bee or stands there, drenched in rain, hair plastered to his pale forehead, eyes too old for his face. Hi, he says quietly, my name is Fernando. People call me Nanbo. I found Pog S in the ocean, and I think they got inside me. My stomach twists. The coppery, metallic smell returns. I glance at Bronwyn. She whispers, Silas. His stomach growls, Lod. We feed him. He eats and eats, still hungry. Why are you like this? I ask. Finally, his voice is small, trembling, years older than he looks. My grandmother fed me everything she could, but I was born cursed. I ate and still starved. I ate her time, her money, her health. When she died, I kept eating. People hated me. I died wanting food and love, and neither came. My throat tightened. Why? We weren't evil. He shook his head. I was just hungry. Then Bronwyn said, quietly, okay, then we feed you. Damir whispered, even if it ruins us. Duncan nodded. He was alone. We're not. I pulled Nanbo into a hug, a real one. He trembled like no one had ever held him before. You don't have to earn this, I murmured. Let us love you. Everything changed after that. We cooked for him because we wanted to. We told him awful jokes. Damir taught him new swear words. Duncan showed him how to fix hinges. Bronwyn trusted him with the stirring spoon. He laughed. He cried. He ate slower. He hugged back. One morning I woke to silence. Nanbo was asleep at the table, peaceful, and Silas was gone. He left one message, writ, and in flour. Thank you for making me full. I cried so hard I had to sit down. The next day Damien opened a drawer and screamed. Money, old coins, crumpled bills, gold everywhere it dunk, and whispered he paid us back. No, I said. He thanked us. We opened the restaurant. We named it Silas Haven. People ask what it means. We just tell them. It's named after someone who was hungry once. He isn't anymore. Story 7. Mortal Error. One terrible act has mortal consequences, a fact that Josephine learned decades prior to the mugging that took place a few minutes ago. She bends down, her long coat trailing in the dank puddles and the freshly spilled blood. In front of her, a young woman's chest rises and falls with more effort than is usually necessary. Josephine's eyes trail from the victim's sweaty face, down the frantically beating pulse in her neck, to the dried bits of blood that have formed crescents under her fingernails, and finally to the unfortunate stab wound in her gut. She's impressed by the bravery this young woman has evidently shown against her long-gone assailants, but has to suppress the urge. He too admonished the act of courage. Well, she asks softly, what did they take from you? The woman's eyes roll in her head. It takes her dark eyes an alarming amount time, more than it should, to focus in on Josephine. But when they do, there is less clarity there than she would have preferred. Death, that dreary entity, is, as always, nearby. With all the patience an immortal can muster, Josephine waits for the dying woman to answer with a bleak, $20. $20, she parrots back, is hardly worth a life. The woman beneath her stares, though whether it's due to incredulity or blood loss remains unknown. What's your name, then? Katie. The name comes out like a sigh. I have to call my dad, Josephine hums. She can't recall the last time she thought of her own guardian. Her sire had imparted as much wisdom she could, though as Josephine grew from a fledgling vampire to a more independent creature, she realized there were things Caleb had neglected to mention. She'd written it all down, all the lessons she'd had to learn the difficult way, and swore to share it with another when the time came. Beneath her, Katie grips Josephine's ankle. There were two of them. One each had a ski mask on. There was a R-up right above the eyebrow, and he had green eyes. Jose finds herself smiling. What else? Katie frowns in consternation, pulling at fresh fragments of the crime left in her memory. High-pitched voice sounded like an insecure asshole. Good. She runs her fingers through Katie's thick black hair. Josephine's hands come away grimy, but in her line of work it's not uncommon for her digits to be dirtied by something or other, not to mention being a hem of her obligate. Good, you've done well, Katie. Those fuckers stole from me and I. Her eyes well up with tears. Can you call my dad? Josephine nods, though she has yet to decide whether or not she follow through. There's a choice to be made here, and though she's running out of time, she grants herself the grace to take whatever is left on tea. He clock, after all. Bringing a new vampire into the world is not something someone does lightly. Even when walking through the streets at night have become more lonely than practical. True, Katie has a fire in her that Josephine has rarely seen. It reminds her of her own death, how she felt her heart slow in her chest. and willed it to beat again, to fight for another breath, another second on this earth. Then the shadow of Caleb, blanketing her, offering her refuge in the night. Josephine didn't know what she was agreeing to at the time. She's not sure she can adequately convey the life of a vampire before Katie slips into unconsciousness. With less than 2 centuries under her belt, she's inexperienced compared to other sires, though her youth has granted her a sense of adaptability her predecessors struggle with. The old coots are still getting used to using rotary telephones and speak as though the turn of the millennium has yet to happen. Caleb had at times been unforgiving with Josephine's fumbles, her rash behavior as a fledgling. The disappointment in his hawk-like eyes was a stabbing pain worse than the preternatural tea. Hurst had been, he wouldn't talk to her, would make her go without blood until she felt mad with hunger. Worse still, he'd shamed her. The promises Josephine had made to herself in the early morning hours, right before the dead sleep, had taken her felt sacred at the time. Would those vows hold the same weight? She wonders if she did this, or would looking back be more like her, living her delinquent, teenaged mortal years. Why won't you call my dad? Josephine chides herself for losing herself, dreaming of all the what-ifs, while the chance to actually live them actively slipped away. Would you like to live? She asks, carding through Katie's hair once more. She hadn't meant to stop. Her wandering mind is detrimental enough in her studio. She can't afford to lose her train of thought while training the next generation of vampire. You wouldn't be the same as you are now. Nothing would be the same. Tear trails on Katie's face. Her bottom lip quivers. Her gaze, though distant, hardens with her vague explanations and her presentation of a choice with only one clear positive outcome. She hopes he's not lurking in the same city tonight, able to see her own shortcomings once more. To live as a vampire, she parts her lips in an almost smile to show off her teeth. Her fangs push through her gums, extending slowly. Josephine has to mind the saliva gathering in her mouth. The scent of blood still lingers heavily in the air, and she wants. But her first act as a sire to Katie will not be one lacking in decorum, if she can help it. Katie's heart gives a spirited thud, as if it has just enough energy left to respond to the fear. Her calloused fingers curl until she forms a loose fit. Josephine's smile relaxes into something genuine. I can help you live to fight another day, she promises. It feels perhaps the most tangible, the most real thing she can give now. This, she thinks, why be the best description she can give now? You will not live the same life, but you can avenge yourself against those who have wronged you tonight. Would you like that? I won't. Katie's words are closer to an exhale than an answer. Her eyes slip close. I want, she repeats. But Josephine doesn't have to hear the half-finished wish. She pulls Katie's body into her lap, turns her face away, and exposes her neck. Then Josephine blesses Katie with a chance to do exactly what she wants.